Hello and welcome to another episode from the water's edge. Now today we're doing a spot of sea fishing. We're down at Aldeburgh Town Beach in Suffolk, one of Suffolk's best cod beaches. Now we're down here hopefully to target some cod. Now why Aldeburgh? Well, Aldeburgh is well known for producing some big fish, and it's also known for producing numbers of fish. Now some of the best features about the beach, it's got a steep shingle profile, so you have some real deep water close in. And this is what attracts the fish. Now we're at the end of November, we've got a strong northwesterly wind, we've got a big building tide with high water around 8:30. So all them things combined, I'm hopeful of one or two fish. Now probably I would expect the most productive time to be a couple of hours before high water, and obviously by then it'll be dark, and this is when the cod will venture in numbers hopefully and start to feed on our baits. Now I've got one rod out at the moment. It's been fishing for about 10 or 15 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to wind that in. We'll check the bait situation, check the crab situation, and then what we'll do is we'll show you what baits we've got with us, what rigs we're using, and a little bit more about tactics and techniques to catch these Suffolk codling. So we'll catch up with you in a second. My rig choice for today is quite simple really. It's a Pulley Panel Rig. Now it's a rig I use for 90% of my sea angling. I use it in the summer months for the bass and for the smooth hound, and I fish it all the way through to the winter for the codling. It basically enables me to fish a big bait and to fish it well. Now the principle behind the Pulley Panel is, as it says, it's a pulley rig, and it's ideal really for fishing snaggy ground. Now, not that the ground we're fishing today is particularly snaggy, but it just enables you that if you get a better fish, as I'll demonstrate here, is you have your swivel attached to your shock leader and it acts as a pulley. So you get a big fish on the hook end and you wind down, and it keeps your lead up out of all the rubbish on the bottom, and then the fish will come up in the water and away from all the debris and snags too. Now, on the hook end, a Panel rig, for anyone who doesn't know, is a twin hook setup. Now, you have two hooks rigged like so. The bottom hook is a Frio, which is the main hook you expect to catch your fish on. Then you also have a smaller 1/0 at the top, and you just nick that in the top of your bait. So you can fish a large worm bait, as you can see, and it gives you two different hooking points, because a fish may come in at this end or it may come in at that end. So it enables you to, it's more effective. You know, if you just fish the single hook, a fish might attack the top of your bait and not get hooked. On the other end, we have a lead that once again I use in all my fishing, and that is a Breakaway Impact Led. Now, the principle behind that is it enables you to clip up. And when I say clip up, it enables you to clip your bait onto the top of the lead like so. Now what that does is it obviously streamlines your cast. All the weight and all your bait is tucked behind that lead. There's no loose flapping bits. It enables you to cast the extra 20 yards, and it just keeps everything neat. So on the cast, your lead hits the water, and you'll see there's these little grooves in the lead, and what that does is the water pushes up there, kicks the red thing up, and your hooks are free. Now, that is the principle behind it. So what I'll do is I'll show you a little bit about the baits we've got. Now, there's two main baits I like to use. One is the good common lugworm. Now, to be completely honest, if I'm cod fishing, I won't go anywhere without these. Now, they are expensive, but to me, it's not worth visiting the beach unless you've got a good supply of them. Secondly, I've got some ragworm. Now, ragworm to me aren't a fantastic cod bait, but I'll show you why I like them in a second. So we've got a few of them, and we've got the lugworm. Now I'll be fishing a bit of a cocktail bait, so what I'll do is we'll bait this rig up and we'll get it back out there. So to start with, you've got your two hooks. This one is sliding, so what I like to do is just wrap your mono round that top hook, and say we're going to fish a bait about so big. Now cod have got big mouths, they're hungry fish, and they'll eat literally anything. So don't be frightened about, you know, using too big a bait really. And you know, don't scrimp on your bait. That's at the end of the day, this is the only thing gives you a chance of catching a fish. So buy the best quality and the most amount of bait you can afford to get the best reward. So what we'll do is we'll bait up now. Now, why I've got the ragworm is I like to put this on first, and I like to have that on the top hook. It's a little bit tougher than lug and it doesn't explode as much. So what I'll do is I'll just thread one on. Just thread it on, making sure not to split the worm. Slide it over the knot, like so. And then I take this top hook and just nick it through. So like so, that's the start of my bait. And then it's just a case of adding the lug. Now, I probably normally add 3 or 4 worms on, depending on the size of the bait. So you just hook it through the fat end and roll it round. Get another one. Take a bit of care doing this, because you don't want to split the worm. You don't want to spend all that money on bait and, you know, having it exploded on the cast. So just take a bit of time. You'll probably get one more worm on here as well. Some good cod baits today as well, some good worms. Just slide him round. And you get this little sandy tail on, and a lot of people leave it on. I just nip it off and chuck it away. So there you go, that is a prime cod bait. Now you see you see what I was saying about the 2 hooks. You got this top hook at the top here, which is completely exposed, and you got the bottom hook, which again his point is completely exposed. You don't want to be masking the hook points, and you don't want to be missing bites. So that way gives you the best chance of hooking a fish. Now if you move on to the impact lead, which if I didn't mention before is 6 ounce, the red top version is 6 ounce. I use them in 90% of my fishing, especially today. We've got a big tide and it's windy, so you want your lead getting out there and you want it fixing. You don't want it moving around. So this just clips on, a little clip, and as you see, when the rig's tight, you get a perfectly presented bait. Now that is streamlined, all the bait's safely behind the lead, and that will cast like a dream. So that is a perfect cod bait. So it's about time we got fishing properly. So we'll get it cast out, and then we'll see you again in a second, hopefully with a fish. Right, that rig's now ready to go out. Now, a couple of quick things before we do cast it out. First of all, obviously, very important is obviously make sure you're using a shock leader. The general rule for shock leader is for every ounce of lead you use a 10-pound shock leader. So today I said we're using 6 ounce leads. This one here I've got some 60-pound grease weasel shock leader and 15-pound mainline. And at the end of the shock leader, something which I think is very important and I use for all my sea fishing, is just to have a little clip link on there. This is, I think, is a Gemini quick clip, something like that. But all that does, it enables you to change your rigs very quickly. And also, obviously, at the end of the session, if you tie your rigs on, you're cutting them off after every session. Slowly, you're cutting away at your shock leader. So this just saves the need to having to cut it. So all you do is you get your swivel and you clip it on. Now that is ready to be cast out. One other little tip I will mention is I fish with multipliers. Now, as you'll notice here, is I have my shock leader knot to one side of the spool. Especially at night, you know, in the winter, your hands are cold, they're wet. You want to, by putting the knot to one side, it one, ensures that you can get a good thumb grip on the spool. And 2, it means that as the knot flies off, it doesn't catch your thumb, because it can be quite sore, believe it or not. You've got your little stumpy tag ends there of mono, and if they nick your finger on that, it can get a little cut and the salt gets in there. It could be quite painful. So just make sure when you wind your knot on, you wind it to one side of the spool, either the left or right. But this one's ready to go now. So the tide at the moment is running from left to right. Let's say tide's coming in. So what you want to do is you want to be casting slightly up tide. So you'll be aiming to cast up tide, I don't know, 20-30 yards. You get quite a fast tide run, so you need to do that, because if you cast straight out, the tide will bring your line and it'll be fishing to the right. So by casting up tide, it allows your lead to really grip in and for you to fish effectively. So we'll get it ready. Let's chuck that, let's let a little bit of line off. I say let the lead have a bit of line, put a bit of bow in the water and it'll grip in easier. Then just slowly, when you feel it grip in, tighten down, a little bend in the tip, and then that one's fishing. As I said, here at Aldeburgh, because we have got quite deep water, there's not always a need to punch it out 200 yards. You know, one, because some of the best fishing can come close in. You've got the deep water, so the fish are in, the fish are here already. And sometimes if you've got a real fast tide run, believe it or not, you can cast too far. The more line you have out, the more tide pull, the more resistance you have on your mono. So, I mean, we've probably lobbed that about 80 yards, and we'll see how we get on. We might want to cast further on in the session, might want to bring the rods in. But we're now coming to that witching hour. It's now going to start to get dark, so I'm probably going to get the other rod ready, and I'll show you a little tip about your rigs, what can really benefit your fishing. So we'll get that done now, and then we'll probably have a cup of coffee and see what unfolds. Well, just now poured the first coffee of the evening. It's always good to have some warm drink or food with you. You know, it's gonna be cold tonight, so it helps keep spirits high. You know, during the quiet periods. You know, and it keeps you sharp as well, which is one of the important things really. Now, the little tip before I drink my coffee, a little tip which I mentioned earlier, is what I like to do is both rods are fishing now, but I still don't stop. What I like to do now is I'm now going to bait another rig. Now, I think they call it double pattern, something like that, which is basically you have a spare rig baited and ready on the trace. Now, cod are shoal fish, and you don't know when they're going to feed. Now, it's very common to have a shoal come through, and you might pick up 2-3 fish in real quick time. Now, if half the time you're out the water putting a bait on, or you know, the excitement can get you, of course it can. You know, we're all anglers and we all catch fish, and when we catch a fish you get excited. Now, to get the most out of it, what I like to do is, if you get a bite, you get the fish in before even I sort the fish out. You leave it there for a few seconds, you got your spare rig baited, you clip it on, you're back out there. Now, rather than hanging around faffing about back up at the shelter, you're back out and you're fishing again with 2 rods. So that's what I'm going to do now. Once again, I'm going to nick the ragworm on first. Something I forgot to mention about the rag is they've got 2 ends. Now, the top end, which is the slightly thicker end, they have a little pair of pincers, so I like to just hold them by the head, and they often stick them out for you. Quickly slide him on over the knot, top hook in, and then we'll build the lugworm bait up. It's not a little bit of hassle even, you know, it can just help you catch that extra fish or two. If the codling only come through in a half-hour window, you don't want to be out of the water for 15 minutes today. You want to be in the water for the maximum amount of time. So it just helps you get that extra fish. So once again, we'll probably get a quite good worm, so we'll probably get 3 lug on here. Just thread it round. Not like that. It's not just if the codling come through, but you know, if there's a lot of little whiting about, like the pin whiting. You know, you don't want to be messing around sorting them out and not fishing. So thread it around. Once again, lovely cod bait. Well, hopefully. Clip that on, and all I'll do is now is I've got a trace bar on my tripod, which you can pick up from most tackle shops, or you can leave it on the ground. But we'll get that hung up on there. Another thing to mention is it's now starting to get dark, so a real key for anglers who fish in the dark and to be successful is to make sure you have your base camp set up. As you can see here, we've got our shelter. It's well held down. I've got a box in here, I've got my bait to hand, I've got a bucket of water to wash my hands on, I've got everything I need, I've got my scissors in here, any bits and pieces. You don't want to be messing around in the dark if you've dropped something or you stood on something. It just makes you fish better, you know, just be organised. But we'll get this hung up on there and I'm going to enjoy my coffee. So we'll hopefully see you in a bit with a fish or two. Well, I think there's a tiny little whiting on there. I did think I had a little nibble. Now, I said earlier, don't worry about your bait being too big. Well, I think we'll show you something here. I think that's a case of eyes too big for his belly. We've got a little whiting, and you can see, I'm pretty sure the bait is probably longer than him. Now, he's probably a lucky man tonight, because if we'd have left him on there a little bit longer, he's a perfect size bait for a cod. Now, you know, they often get nailed this size. You leave him like that, you'll get a huge bite and you'll wind in and a codling would have nailed him. But he's a lucky one, so what we'll do is we'll slip him back and we'll get another bait out there. Just lip hooked. Look at that. Perfection in miniature. We'll get him back. Well, I'm just having a wind in now. Just going to put some tip lights on, just check my headlamp and stuff like that, because we're quickly losing the light now, so I'd just like to get them on before it gets too dark. What I will probably do is I'll just tighten the magnets up on the multiplier a little bit, because in darkness obviously you can't see when your lead's going to hit the water, so I just like to tighten it up on the side. It just helps stop overruns and bird nests and stuff like that when it's dark. But I'll just get these tip lights on now. I've got these little ones, I'm not sure what they're called, but because the tip of your multiplier rod is a little finer than some of the fixed spools, they'll just clip on, just like so. And what it does, you can see there, the line's not going to catch on it. It's fine. It just allows you, I can sit there in the shelter and I can keep an eye on the rod tips even when it gets dark. So I'll get this one done. And I'll just show you now, as I mentioned, about having another rig ready. So that's been out of the water 15-20 seconds. The other rig's off. We pop that down there. The pre-baited rig from the tripod. It's clipped on. And we're ready to go. Now, if you didn't have that ready, you'd imagine you'd still be baiting up by now. You'd still be taking the old bait off, baiting up. So I can cast this one out. It's fishing almost instantly. I can then sort out that old rig and get another bait on there. But as I said, we're now coming up to the good time, so I'm eager to get fishing. I'll just adjust that knot again, put it to one side, and we'll get it back out. just got the other rig baited, so I'm now bringing the second rod in. We'll get a clip light on this one as well. What I'm probably going to have to do now is now that the tide is really starting to pull hard, the left-hand rod now, even though we're casting it up tide, it's still, the line is swinging round to the right. So you sort of have to hop over it if you like. So what I will do with this one now is cast that further up tide again, and then I'll swap the rods over on the rest. That just saves the lines tangling. I mean, you just have to watch out what's happening in the session, and you'll be able to see. And there's actually a little fish on here, a little whiting. Show him up to you. It's not the biggest. Slippery though. There you go. I mean, at this time of year, they can almost become a pain. If you're targeting cod, they're greedy, they get to the bait first, but it's better than not catching sometimes. But and also I'll show you here, so you can see the beauty of that top hook. This is actually the bottom hook, you see there, where he's fallen for the ragworm, which was on the top hook. So just bend that out. There you go. A little Aldeburgh Whiting. Right, we'll slip him back, we'll get the tip light on, and we'll hopefully get a few more. I just had quite a good bite on this right hand rod. I think there's a fish on there. One important thing to remember is when you do have a fish on, is try and beach it with the wave. So if the wave comes in, you can just bring it in on the wave. And it looks, I've actually got two fish. Now, I said about whiting, and I said about how they come in numbers. But what about that? Two fish on a supposed one hook trace. So the big bait, you see this smaller whiting has taken the bottom hook, and then this bigger fish has taken the top hook. Now, if this one's taken the bait first, it's hooked itself, it's flapping about, it's creating a bit of commotion, this bigger one has probably come in to see what all the fuss was about, and he may have even had a swipe at that other one, or he's took the top bit of ragworm. But a couple of nice fish, not what we're after. We've had a few of these now, but that is one of the things about fishing, especially at night. Whiting come in their numbers during darkness, and they're ravenous really. But it's not, it's a little bit when you're bream fishing and you're getting roached out, but we don't want to show you them all. They're a little bit like peas in the pod, but as you can see, it's quite unusual. But we'll get these unhooked, get them back, and we'll get another rig out there. There you go. A couple of Suffolk Whiting. Now, one thing you'll notice is the size of their mouths. Now, no wonder he's had a go at that bait. As I said, it's not just cod who've got big mouths. I mean, look at the size of that. That'll easily get that pennel rig down its gob like it has done here. You'll also notice that when you're unhooking them, they've got lots of tiny little sharp teeth, and anyone who knows, if you've had a good night's whiting fishing, you'll wake up the next day and your hands and fingers might be a little bit sore where these have caught you, but they're nothing to worry about. But a couple of nice fish, we'll get them slipped back. turn bait in the other rig up. Important thing is just to remove your old bait. It's no good, it just goes in a mush, and if anything, you might think once it's been washed out, it does nothing other than cause a problem, because all that's going to do is it's going to mask the hook point, and you know, you're going to miss bites and miss fish. So always take your old bait off and start from fresh and get some good new bait on there. Now we're well into the session now, and we're starting to put a few fish together. No codling as yet, but you know, there's still a chance. It's one of the great things about sea fish, you know, you just don't know what's going to happen next or what's out there. But at the moment it's just whiting, but we'll keep plugging away, we're working hard. Fresh baits out regularly. But you never know. But we shall see. We've got a few hours yet. We've got a few hours before high water, so we're probably coming into the time now where I'd expect to catch if we're going to. But as I say, we'll keep plugging away, and you never know. Once again, nice big bait, as you've seen already. They're not shy. It just gives you plenty of smell and scent in the water, and it's important to regularly recast. You know, if you become lazy, your baits get washed out quickly, you're not fishing effectively, and if you're only here to fish one tide, or you know, for 4 hours, then you want to fish as hard as you can to get the most out of your fishing. But we'll probably have to start another pack of worms in a minute. We've got 100 with us and that £1/4 pound of rag, so we've got plenty of bait. So there you go, another prime cod bait ready. So we'll get it clipped up and we'll get it back on the tripod. So hopefully we'll see you again in a minute with another fish or two. There you go, that's ready to go. Now what cod could resist that? Well, I've had a little bite on this right hand rod, and by the feel of it, I think we might have another whiting on here. They've been absolutely relentless tonight. They've just been hammering everything we put out, whatever size bait, and I think they've probably been getting to it before the cod have had a chance. But at least we're catching something. We've only shown you a tiny amount of the fish we've had on camera. We've got the camera light going so that it wears the battery down quicker, so we didn't want to sacrifice the camera just in case we did get a codling. But I'll show you another fish, a typical size really. Swing him in. Slippery customer, but that's a typical size we've been getting. We've had loads of them tonight, we really have. Just slip these hooks out. And there you go, they are like peas in a pod. And I said before, once these hit the beaches, they're absolutely ravenous. They come in big shoals and they just eat everything in sight. But what we'll do is we'll slip him back and we'll get another bait ready. Well, we're coming towards the end of the session now. The tide started to go the other way, and to be honest with you, I've been completely whitened out. Now, the codling just haven't turned up, and there you go, so there's another white in there. Now, I don't know why, but you know, that's one of the things with sea fishing. You're not fishing a 2-acre lake or a 4-acre lake. You know, the fish could be 500 yards offshore, they could be a mile offshore, and if they don't decide to come into the beach and feed, well, you know, you simply can't catch them. But I think one of the reasons tonight has been that the whiting has been getting to the baits first. I mean, there's another fish there, and what we'll probably do is we'll probably call this the last one. Now, I will be seeing some cod tonight, as I think after a session of battling away with these, we deserve some cod and chips. So that's what we're going to do. So thanks for watching. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you again on the next one.